I never thought my own family would turn on me like this. My name is Rebecca, and at 32 years old, I found myself caught in a nightmare when my grandmother left me an inheritance. What should have been a blessing became the catalyst for revealing who my family really was. My sister Cassandra and her fiancé Ryan believed my inheritance should fund their dream wedding. When I refused, they said something that broke my heart completely. Before I tell you how this all unfolded, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Also, hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to stand up to family members who tried to take advantage of you. Growing up, Cassandra and I were as different as night and day. For years younger than me, she was the baby of the family, the princess who could do no wrong. While I was the responsible one who always played by the rules, got good grades, and helped around the house, Cassandra was allowed to focus on her social life and appearance. Our parents never seemed to notice this imbalance, or if they did, they considered it normal. "Rebecca can handle it," my mother would say whenever an extra chore needed doing or someone had to babysit Cassandra. She is the mature one. By the time I was 16, I was practically running the household while maintaining straight A's. Meanwhile, Cassandra was being driven to dance lessons, cheerleading practice, and shopping trips. I did not resent her for this at the time. I loved my sister and accepted that this was just how our family worked. Our grandmother Martha was different, though. She saw me. Really saw me. While our parents fawned over Cassandra, Grandma Martha would invite me over to her modest home where we would bake cookies, tend to her garden, or just sit and talk about books and life. She taught me the value of hard work, integrity, and standing up for myself, even though I rarely applied that last lesson within my own family. "You have a backbone of steel, Rebecca," she would tell me. "Someday, you will need to use it." Grandma Martha had grown up during the Great Depression and knew the value of every dollar. She had worked as a nurse for 40 years, saved diligently, and made wise investments. While she was not wealthy by most standards, she had built a comfortable nest egg through decades of careful planning. Cassandra rarely visited Grandma Martha unless there was a holiday or special occasion. She found our grandmother's stories boring and her house too stuffy. Still, she would make an appearance at Christmas or Thanksgiving, usually spending most of the time on her phone while I helped Grandma in the kitchen. When Grandma Martha turned 80, her health began to decline. I started visiting her 3 times a week, helping with groceries, taking her to doctor appointments, and making sure her house was clean and comfortable. Cassandra came along maybe once every 2 months, usually when our parents insisted or when she needed money for a new outfit or concert tickets. Grandma always gave it to her with a smile, though I sometimes caught a look of disappointment in her eyes. During the last year of her life, I practically moved in with Grandma Martha. I would work my full-time job as an accountant during the day, then spend evenings and weekends at her house. Cassandra was in college by then, though she seemed more focused on parties than classes. She called occasionally but visited even less frequently than before. When Grandma Martha passed away peacefully in her sleep at 85, I was devastated. She had been more than a grandmother to me. She had been my mentor, my confidant, and sometimes the only person who truly understood me. At the funeral, Cassandra cried dramatically, telling everyone how close she had been to our grandmother. I said nothing, focusing instead on honoring Grandma's memory with dignity. A week after the funeral, we gathered at our family lawyer's office for the reading of the will. I had expected Grandma's modest savings to be split equally between my parents, Cassandra, and me. So when Mr. Bronson, the family attorney, announced that Grandma Martha had left 70% of her estate to me, 15% to Cassandra, and 15% to our parents, a heavy silence fell over the room. Additionally, Mr. Bronson continued, adjusting his glasses, "Martha has left her house and all its contents to Rebecca, with the stipulation that certain family heirlooms be distributed as detailed in this separate document." I sat in shock, tears streaming down my face. The inheritance was substantial, much more than I had expected. Grandma Martha had been far more savvy with investments than any of us had realized. My portion amounted to just over $300,000, plus the house valued at around $250,000. My parents exchanged looks I could not quite decipher. Cassandra stared at the floor, her expression unreadable. After the meeting, there were awkward congratulations and assurances that Grandma Martha had known what she was doing. I tried to talk to Cassandra about it, but she brushed me off, saying she had to get to class. That night, alone in my apartment, I made a list of how I would use the inheritance. I would renovate Grandma's house and move in, saving on rent. I would boost my retirement savings, create an emergency fund, and perhaps take a modest vacation. I had no intention of being flashy or wasteful with Grandma's hard-earned money. For a brief moment, I dared to hope that this inheritance might not change anything between us, that we would remain a family, supporting each other as we always had. How naive I was. How incredibly, foolishly naive. 2 months after Grandma Martha's passing, Cassandra called me, bubbling with excitement. She had gotten engaged to her boyfriend of 8 months, Ryan. I had only met him twice, but he seemed charming enough, if a bit flashy for my taste. He drove a luxury car, wore designer clothes, and always talked about his business ventures, though I was never quite clear on what he actually did for a living. "We are thinking of a spring wedding," Cassandra gushed over the phone. "Something really special, you know? Ryan has connections with some amazing vendors." I congratulated her sincerely. Despite our differences, I wanted my sister to be happy. When she asked if I would be her maid of honor, I agreed immediately, touched by the gesture of inclusion. The first red flag appeared during our initial wedding planning session at my parents' house. What I had expected to be a casual brainstorming meeting turned out to be a presentation of sorts. Ryan had created a digital slideshow of wedding venues, all of which looked like they belonged in a celebrity magazine. "This one is our favorite," Cassandra said, showing me pictures of a historic mansion with manicured gardens and a ballroom that could accommodate 300 guests. "It is perfect, right?" "It is beautiful," I agreed cautiously. "But it must be very expensive." Ryan waved his hand dismissively. "You only get married once. It is worth investing in the perfect day." I nodded, though something about his tone made me uncomfortable. When Cassandra mentioned wanting a designer dress that cost as much as a small car, I gently suggested looking at some more affordable options. "We will see," she said with a tight smile. "Oh, Rebecca, I almost forgot. Would you mind helping me with the invitations? You are so good with that kind of thing." I agreed, of course. Over the next few weeks, I spent hours researching invitation options, creating spreadsheets of guests, and helping Cassandra narrow down her choices. I was happy to help, glad to be included in this important event in my sister's life. Then came the day Cassandra and our mother came to my apartment with fabric swatches and bridesmaid dress options. As we sat around my kitchen table with coffee and the pastries I had picked up that morning, my mother casually mentioned my inheritance. "Have you decided what you are going to do with all that money, Rebecca? It is such a blessing that Martha was so generous with you." I explained my plans for the house and savings, keeping my voice even despite the strange undertone I detected in her question. "That is nice, dear," my mother replied, "though it seems like such a lot of money just sitting there when it could be put to good use." Cassandra jumped in then. "Speaking of which, Rebecca, you should see the flowers we are looking at for the wedding. The florist Ryan knows is amazing but not cheap." The conversation moved on, but something had shifted. I caught my mother and Cassandra exchanging glances several times, and there was a new tension in the air that had not been there before. The following Sunday, we had a family dinner at my parents' house. Ryan was there, as charismatic as ever, talking about his latest business deal. When I asked what exactly his company did, he gave a vague answer about market facilitation and quickly changed the subject. After dinner, as I was helping my mother with the dishes, she said something that caught me off guard. "It is such a shame you have not found someone special yet, Rebecca. At your age, it gets harder, you know." I was 32, hardly ancient. "I am focusing on my career right now, Mom. And now I will be busy with the house renovations." "Yes, but all that money and no one to share it with," she sighed. "At least Cassandra and Ryan have each other." The comment stung more than it should have. Back in the living room, I noticed Ryan showing my father something on his phone, both of them looking serious. When they saw me, They quickly switched to discussing sports. The next day, I received a text from Cassandra asking if I could meet her for lunch. We met at a cafe near my office. And she spent the first 20 minutes showing me photos of wedding cakes and asking my opinion. Then, stirring her latte nervously, she finally got to the point. So, Becca, you know Ryan and I are trying to make this wedding really special. I nodded, already sensing where this was going. The thing is, with the venue deposit and the dress I fell in love with, we are a bit stretched right now. Ryan has some investments that have not quite matured yet, and my teaching assistant salary barely covers my student loans. She reached across the table and took my hand. I was wondering if maybe you could help us out a little? Just a loan until Ryan's business deal comes through. $10,000 or so. $10,000 was not a small amount, but I did have the inheritance. Still, something felt off about the request. What happened to the wedding budget you and Ryan set? Cassandra waved dismissively. You know how these things go. Everything costs more than you expect. Please, Becca? It would mean so much to me. I promise to think about it. Which clearly was not the enthusiastic yes she had been expecting. Her smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly, changing the subject to bridesmaid dresses. That evening, I did some research on Ryan Anderson. What I found was concerning. While there was nothing definitively damning, there were several business review sites where people had complained about investments gone wrong and promises unfulfilled. Nothing had gone to court, but the pattern was troubling. 2 days later, my parents called and invited me to dinner, just the three of us. Over Mom's pot roast, they gently but persistently brought up Cassandra's wedding. She has always dreamed of a beautiful wedding, my mother said. And now she has found such a wonderful man in Ryan. He is really going places, my father added. Very ambitious. When they finally got around to mentioning the temporary financial assistance Cassandra needed, I realized this dinner had been orchestrated specifically to pressure me. I am still thinking about it, I said carefully. 10,000 is a lot of money. My mother looked surprised. Oh, but she needs closer to 30,000 to cover everything she wants. Did she not tell you that? The amount had tripled. Red flags were now waving frantically in my mind. That is a significant loan, I said. I would need to see a detailed budget and repayment plan. My parents exchanged a look I had seen many times growing up, the one that said they thought I was being difficult. Rebecca, my father said in his best reasonable voice, this is family we are talking about. Your sister needs your help. And it is not like you do not have the money. Your grandmother left you more than enough. That night, I called my best friend Megan and told her everything. Unlike my family, she saw the situation clearly. They are taking advantage of you. Becca, she said. First it was your time and help, now they want your money. And I will bet you anything that loan would never be repaid. Deep down, I knew she was right. But these were my parents, my sister. How had we gotten to this point? The following week, Cassandra asked me to meet her and Ryan for coffee to discuss wedding details. I should have known better, but I went anyway, armed with questions about their budget and plans. The coffee shop was busy, which I later realized was intentional on their part. Ryan was all smiles and charm as we sat down, immediately launching into stories about their venue tours and tastings. We have found the perfect caterer, he said, showing me photos of elaborate food displays. They do these amazing ice sculptures as centerpieces. I smiled politely, waiting for the real purpose of this meeting. It came after about 20 minutes of wedding talk. So, Rebecca, Ryan said, his voice dropping to a more serious tone. Cassandra mentioned you might be able to help us make this special day everything she deserves. I took a deep breath. She mentioned needing some financial assistance, yes. But I would need to understand exactly what the money would be used for and how you plan to pay it back. Ryan's smile dimmed slightly. Well, we are hoping for more of a gift than a loan. Actually, family helping family, you know? Your grandmother would have wanted Cassandra to have a beautiful wedding. The mention of my grandmother sent a surge of anger through me. But I kept my voice steady. Grandma Martha was always careful with money. She believed in living within your means. Times are different now, Cassandra interjected. Besides, you got so much more than I did. It is only fair that you share some of it. I received more because I was there for her, I said quietly. Every week for years. Cassandra's face flushed. So that is it? You think you deserved more because you visited her more? I was busy with school and building my life. Several people at nearby tables glanced our way. Ryan placed a calming hand on Cassandra's arm before turning his attention back to me. Look, Rebecca, we are not asking for all of your inheritance. Just enough to give Cassandra the wedding day she has always dreamed of. 30,000. That is barely a dent in what you received. I shook my head. I am sorry, but that is a lot of money. I might be able to help with a smaller amount, maybe 5,000, but even that would be a stretch right now with the house renovations. Cassandra's eyes filled with tears. I cannot believe how selfish you are being. This is the most important day of my life. I am not being selfish, I protested. I am being realistic. The kind of wedding you are describing would cost well over $50,000. That is excessive by any standard. Only someone who has never been in love would say that, Cassandra snapped. But I guess you would not understand, would you? When was the last time you even went on a date? The personal attack caught me off guard. Ryan, seeing my hurt expression, quickly stepped in with a more diplomatic approach. What if we put together a detailed budget for you? Would that help you consider a more substantial contribution? I agreed to look at a budget, mostly to end this uncomfortable conversation. As I walked home, Cassandra's words echoed in my mind. Had my own sister really attacked my personal life to guilt me into giving her money? That evening, my parents called. Clearly, Cassandra had already given them her version of our meeting. Rebecca, how could you be so stingy with your sister? My mother demanded without even saying hello. After all she has done for you. I was bewildered. What exactly has she done for me, Mom? There was a pause. Well, she has always included you in everything, even though you two are so different. And she asked you to be her maid of honor. The conversation deteriorated from there. My father got on the phone and reminded me that family comes first and that money is meant to be used, not hoarded. By the time I hung up, I was shaking with anger and hurt. 2 days later, I received an email from Ryan with an attached wedding budget. It was less a budget and more a wish list, with items like premium open bar and fireworks display alongside more standard expenses. The total came to just over $70,000. With a note that they were only asking me to contribute $30,000. I forwarded the email to Megan, who called me immediately. This is insane, she said. They are planning a celebrity wedding on a teacher's and whatever Ryan does budget. Plus your money, apparently. When I did not immediately respond to Ryan's email, the text messages began. First from Cassandra, expressing disappointment in my lack of enthusiasm for her special day. Then from my mother, asking why I was being difficult. Even my father sent a message suggesting I think about what Grandma would have wanted. It was during a particularly tense family dinner the following Sunday that I overheard something that changed everything. I had stepped out to use the bathroom and was returning down the hallway when I heard Ryan's voice from the kitchen. Once we get the money from Rebecca, we can pay off the credit cards and put the rest toward the venue, he was saying in a low voice. My bookie agreed to extend the deadline if I can give him 10 grand by next month. Are you sure that is a good idea? Cassandra replied. Using the wedding money to pay off your gambling debts? It is just temporary, Ryan assured her. My next deal is going to pay off big time, and then we will have everything we need for the wedding and more. I froze in the hallway, my heart pounding. Gambling debts? Was that where all their money was going? I quietly retreated a few steps, then made a point of walking loudly as I approached again. The kitchen fell silent. Throughout dinner, I could not look at either of them without feeling sick. They continued to talk about wedding plans, with my parents enthusiastically suggesting even more extravagant additions. When my mother mentioned that I would surely want to contribute to make her sister's day special, I excused myself early, claiming a headache. At home, I broke down in tears. The people I loved most in the world were trying to manipulate me into funding not just an outrageously expensive wedding, but apparently Ryan's gambling problem as well. I felt completely alone. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. I needed space to think. As I sat in my quiet apartment, I received a text from Cassandra. Mom and Dad want to have a family meeting tonight to discuss wedding preparations. Please be there at 7. It is important. I replied that I was not feeling well. But the response was immediate and insistent. You need to be there. No excuses. Something in my gut told me this was not going to be a normal family discussion. I called Megan, who offered to be on standby if I needed support afterward. Remember, she said, you do not owe them your inheritance. That was between you and your grandmother. I arrived at my parents' house that evening with a sense of dread that proved entirely justified. When I walked into my parents' living room that evening, the setup immediately put me on edge. My parents and Cassandra sat on one side of the room, with a single chair positioned opposite them, clearly meant for me. Ryan stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, looking more like a businessman about to close a deal than a future family member. Rebecca, sit down, my father said, gesturing to the lone chair. We need to talk. I sat, feeling like I was facing a firing squad. My mother reached over and patted Cassandra's hand supportively before turning to me with an expression of disappointment I knew all too well. We have been very patient with you, Rebecca, she began. But your attitude about your sister's wedding is becoming a real problem. Cassandra dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, though I noticed no actual tears. I just do not understand why you want to ruin the happiest day of my life, she said, her voice quivering. I do not want to ruin anything, I protested. I simply cannot afford to give you $30,000. Ryan stepped forward. Rebecca, let me lay out the situation clearly. Cassandra and I have put deposits down on our dream venue and several key vendors. These were time-sensitive decisions that could not wait for your deliberations. You made financial commitments assuming I would pay for them. I asked incredulously. My father cleared his throat. The point is, those commitments have been made now. If you do not help, your sister will lose her deposits and her dream wedding, which would be entirely her fault for planning a wedding she cannot afford, I pointed out. That is such a cold way to look at it, my mother said, shaking her head. This is about family, not spreadsheets and budgets. Ryan pulled a chair up beside me, too close for comfort. Let me be frank, Rebecca. Your grandmother left you a small fortune while giving Cassandra comparatively little. Now your sister has found happiness and wants to start her life with a beautiful celebration. Why would you deny her that when you have more than enough? I looked at each of their faces, searching for any sign of understanding or empathy. There was none. The inheritance was Grandma Martha's decision, I said finally. She had her reasons. Yes, because you manipulated her when she was old and vulnerable, Cassandra spat, dropping the tearful act. You were always there, whispering in her ear, making yourself look like the perfect granddaughter. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. That is not true. I loved her. I took care of her because I wanted to, not to get her money. Convenient that it worked out so well for you then, Ryan remarked with a smirk. My mother leaned forward. Rebecca, be reasonable. What do you need all that money for anyway? You are not married, you do not have children. Cassandra is starting a family. She needs it more than you do. That is not for you to decide, I said, my voice shaking. Grandma Martha left that money to me, and I have plans for it. My father's expression hardened. Plans? Like what? More sensible shoes and accounting books? Your sister has real needs. And I do not. I asked, feeling something break inside me. Cassandra rolled her eyes. Please. You will still be an old maid 10 years from now. You do not need that money. The room went silent. Even my parents looked uncomfortable at her cruelty, though neither contradicted her. Ryan seized the moment. What your sister means is that your lifestyle is already established. You are content with your job and your simple life. Cassandra and I are just starting out. We need this to begin our marriage properly. I stood up, my legs unsteady. I need to leave. My father rose as well, his expression stern. If you walk out that door without agreeing to help your sister, do not expect things to be the same between us. Is that an ultimatum? I asked quietly. It is reality, he replied. Family helps family. If you cannot do that one simple thing, then perhaps you need to reconsider what family means. I looked at my mother, hoping for some support, but she merely looked away. Cassandra stared at me with cold eyes, all pretense of sisterly affection gone. Ryan stood with his arm around her, a triumphant smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I will think about it," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "We need an answer now," Ryan pressed. "The final venue payment is due next week." I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. "Then the answer is no." "You selfish bitch," Cassandra shouted after me. "After everything we have done for you." I closed the door on her words and walked to my car, tears streaming down my face. Once inside, I sat for several minutes, unable to drive through my tears. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls, but I ignored them all. When I finally made it home, I called Megan, who came over immediately with ice cream and wine. I told her everything through broken sobs. They called me an old maid, Megan. My own family. They said I do not need the money because I do not have anyone to share it with. Megan held me as I cried. "They are showing you who they really are, Becca. And it has nothing to do with who you are. This is about their greed, not your worth." For the next week, I barely functioned. I went to work, came home, and stared at walls. My phone continued to buzz with increasingly manipulative messages from my family. My mother claimed she was having chest pains from the stress. My father said I was breaking my grandmother's heart in heaven. Cassandra vacillated between vicious attacks and tearful pleas. Through it all, something kept nagging at me. Ryan's mention of a bookie and gambling debts. The urgency of their demands. It did not add up. On Saturday morning, I made a decision. I called Mr. Bronson, my grandmother's attorney. "I need to know if anyone else has been asking about my inheritance," I said after explaining the situation. There was a pause on the line. "I am not at liberty to discuss other clients' inquiries," he said carefully. "But I would strongly advise you to ensure all your financial information is secure." That was all I needed to hear. I spent the next hour changing passwords on all my accounts and placing a freeze on my credit. Then I called the bank where my inheritance was held and asked about recent inquiries. The customer service representative confirmed that someone had called multiple times trying to access information about my account, but had been unable to verify the security questions. When I asked who it was, she hesitated. "I really should not say, but since it is your account." The caller identified herself as Cassandra Wilson, saying she had power of attorney for you. My blood ran cold. My sister had tried to access my inheritance by pretending to be my legal representative. How far would she and Ryan go? I thanked the representative and hung up, my mind racing. Then I noticed an email notification on my phone. It was from my parents' home computer, but addressed from me to Ryan, apparently accidentally sent to me as well. The email contained scanned copies of personal documents from my grandmother's estate, including account numbers and the will itself. They had gone through my things while I was visiting them. Someone had accessed my personal documents, scanned them, and sent them to Ryan. This was no longer just about a wedding. This was about theft and fraud. The family I had known and loved all my life was gone, replaced by strangers who saw me only as a bank account to be emptied. I sat in my apartment, staring at the evidence on my phone, and felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, but now it was hardening into resolve. If they wanted a fight, they would get one. But it would be on my terms. The following Monday, I took a personal day from work and made 3 important appointments. The first was with a different attorney, one with no connection to my family. Barbara Chin was recommended by a colleague as tough but fair, specializing in estate matters and family disputes. "Based on what you have told me," Barbara said after I had explained everything, "you have every right to protect your inheritance. The attempts to access your accounts fraudulently and the copying of your documents without permission are serious concerns." She helped me draft a formal cease and desist letter, though we agreed not to send it yet. "Let us gather more information first," she advised. Knowledge is power in these situations. My second appointment was with a financial advisor who helped me move my inheritance into more secure accounts with additional verification steps. No one would be able to access these funds by simply knowing my personal information or pretending to be me. I would also recommend documenting all interactions with your family regarding money from this point forward, he suggested. If things escalate, you will want a clear record. My final appointment was with a therapist. Dr. Morris listened without judgment as I poured out the whole painful story. What you are experiencing is financial abuse, she said when I had finished. Combined with emotional manipulation and what sounds like a lifetime of family dynamics that positioned you as the responsible one who should sacrifice for others. I just cannot believe they would go this far, I said, wiping away tears. Over a wedding of all things. Dr. Morris shook her head. I suspect the wedding is just the presenting issue. Your inheritance represents something much bigger to them, a shift in power dynamics they are not comfortable with. Suddenly you have resources they want. And they're using every emotional lever they can to regain control. I left her office with a follow-up appointment scheduled and a recommendation for a book on establishing healthy boundaries. For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was not powerless in this situation. Back at home, I decided to do some research into Ryan's financial situation. If he truly had gambling debts, there might be public records that could verify this. What I found shocked me. Ryan had a history of small claims court cases against him for unpaid debts. He had filed for bankruptcy 3 years ago, listing substantial gambling losses as part of his financial troubles. There were also reviews online from people claiming he had borrowed money for business opportunities that never materialized. Even more concerning, I found social media posts from Cassandra showing extravagant purchases, expensive restaurant meals, and luxury goods that seemed far beyond what a teaching assistant could afford. Either Ryan was funding her lifestyle despite his own financial problems, or Cassandra had secret debt of her own. I dug deeper, using skills from my accounting background to piece together a financial picture. By cross-referencing dates of expensive purchases with Ryan's court appearances for debt collection, a pattern emerged. They would spend lavishly, then seek money from family or friends when the bills came due. Cassandra had texted me several times that day, alternating between guilt trips and angry accusations. I did not respond. Instead, I called Megan and asked if I could stay with her for a few days. I needed space from the constant barrage of manipulation, and I was genuinely concerned about what my family might do next. Stay as long as you need, Megan said without hesitation. My guest room is yours. I packed enough clothes for a week, along with important documents and my laptop. Before leaving, I installed a small security camera facing my front door, connected to an app on my phone. Paranoid perhaps, but after discovering they had gone through my personal papers, I was taking no chances. That evening, as Megan and I shared pizza and wine in her apartment, my phone rang with my mother's number. I let it go to voicemail. The message she left was concerning. Rebecca, this silent treatment is childish and hurtful. Your father and I have raised you better than this. We are coming by your apartment tomorrow at 7 to sort this out once and for all. Be there. I looked at Megan. They are planning another ambush. Are you going to meet them? She asked. I thought for a moment, then shook my head. Not tomorrow. Not on their terms. But I am going to end this my way. Over the next 3 days, I worked remotely from Megan's apartment, focusing on my job during the day and my strategy during evenings. My parents left increasingly angry messages about my absence from my apartment. Cassandra sent texts claiming I was breaking our mother's heart and ruining her wedding. Ryan called once, his tone businesslike, offering to work out a compromise. I ignored them all while continuing my research. What I found painted a clear picture. Ryan had a gambling addiction he had never addressed. Cassandra had developed expensive tastes she could not afford. Together, they had accumulated significant debt while maintaining an image of success and prosperity. The wedding they were planning was not just beyond their means, it was beyond reason. The budget had ballooned from $70,000 to nearly $100,000 as they added more extravagant elements. Based on my calculations, at least $40,000 of that would go toward paying existing debts rather than actual wedding expenses. Armed with this information, I created a detailed presentation using my accounting skills. Spreadsheets, timelines, and financial projections laid out the reality of their situation in stark, undeniable terms. I included screenshots of court records, social media posts showing expensive purchases, and a breakdown of their actual wedding budget versus what they claimed. I also prepared an alternative proposal, a reasonable path forward that would allow for a lovely wedding within their actual means, without sending them further into debt. It included recommendations for financial counseling and resources for Ryan's gambling issues. On Friday morning, I sent a group text to my parents, Cassandra, and Ryan. I am ready to discuss the wedding and my inheritance. Please come to my apartment Sunday at 2 p.m. I have an important proposal to share with all of you. The responses were immediate. My mother expressed relief that I had come to my senses. My father said it was about time. Cassandra sent a string of excited emojis. Ryan simply wrote, "Looking forward to resolving this matter." They thought they had won. They thought I had given in to their pressure and would hand over my inheritance. They could not have been more wrong. I spent Saturday preparing my apartment, setting up my presentation on the television screen and arranging seating so everyone could see it clearly. I made coffee and set out store-bought cookies. Nice enough to be hospitable, but not special enough to feel celebratory. That night, I hardly slept. What I was about to do would likely change my family relationships forever. But they had already changed, I reminded myself. I was simply acknowledging the reality and protecting myself. Sunday arrived, and with it came a strange calm. I was no longer afraid or uncertain. I knew exactly what I needed to do. At 1:45, I turned on the security camera app on my phone and watched as my family arrived together. Ryan driving. My parents and Cassandra chatting animatedly as they approached my building. They looked happy, victorious even. That would soon change. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and opened the door to face my family one last time as the person they thought they could manipulate and control. By the time they left, they would know the real Rebecca. The one with the backbone of steel that Grandma Martha had always seen in me. I opened the door to find my family standing there with expectant smiles. My mother immediately moved to hug me, as if the past weeks of manipulation and cruelty had never happened. "Rebecca, darling, we are so glad you have come around," she said, patting my cheek. "Family should stick together." I stepped back, keeping my expression neutral. "Please come in and have a seat. I have prepared something I would like to show you all." They exchanged glances, clearly interpreting my businesslike tone as nervousness rather than resolve. Ryan strode in confidently, looking around my apartment with an appraising eye that made my skin crawl. "Nice place, Rebecca. Though your grandmother's house will be an upgrade, right?" he said with a wink. I gestured to the seating area where I had arranged chairs facing the television screen. "Please sit down. Would anyone like coffee?" My father rubbed his hands together. "Let us get to the good stuff first. You mentioned a proposal?" "Yes," I said calmly. "I have given a lot of thought to everything that has happened, and I have made some decisions I would like to share with you." Cassandra bounced slightly in her seat. "I knew you would come around, Becca. I already called the venue to tell them we will be able to make the payment this week." "Let me show you what I have prepared first," I said, picking up the remote. "Then we can discuss next steps." I clicked the remote, and the screen lit up with the title slide of my presentation. Wedding Budget Reality Check and Financial Future Planning. The smiles around the room faltered slightly. "What is this?" my mother asked, her voice losing its warmth. "This is the truth," I replied, advancing to the next slide, which showed a timeline of Ryan's financial troubles, including his bankruptcy filing and gambling debts. Ryan shot to his feet. "What the hell is this? Have you been investigating me?" "Please sit down, Ryan," I said calmly. "Yes, I did some research after overhearing you discuss using my money to pay off your bookie. Public records are available to anyone who looks." The color drained from Cassandra's face. "You were eavesdropping on us?" "No. I was returning from the bathroom when I overheard your conversation. There is a difference." I advanced to the next slide, which showed screenshots of Cassandra's social media posts featuring expensive purchases alongside a chart of her income as a teaching assistant. "This is an invasion of privacy," Cassandra protested, her voice rising. You had no right. These are public posts you made yourself, I pointed out. I simply organized them chronologically alongside some financial realities. My parents sat in stunned silence as I methodically worked through the presentation, revealing the extent of Ryan and Cassandra's financial irresponsibility, their mounting debts, and the true purpose of the money they were demanding from me. As you can see, I said, indicating a pie chart, approximately 45% of the funds you requested would go toward existing debts, not actual wedding expenses. That includes $22,000 in gambling debts and $13,000 in credit card balances for luxury purchases. Ryan's face had turned an alarming shade of red. You have no idea what you are talking about. My business deals are complex and temporary cash flow issues are normal. I clicked to the next slide, showing court records of judgments against him. These do not look like temporary issues to me. These show a pattern going back 5 years. My father finally found his voice. Rebecca, what is the point of all this? So they have some financial challenges. That is all the more reason for family to help. The point, I said, meeting his gaze steadily, is that giving them $30,000 would not solve their problems. It would enable destructive behavior that would continue long after the wedding. I advanced to the next section of my presentation, showing their wedding budget alongside what they could realistically afford. You could have a beautiful wedding for $20,000. I explained. Here is a breakdown of reasonable costs for each category based on your actual income. Cassandra was openly crying now, but these tears seemed genuine, born of humiliation rather than manipulation. You have ruined everything, she sobbed. We cannot possibly have the wedding we want for $20,000. You can have the wedding you can afford, I corrected her. Which is what responsible adults do. My mother stood up, her face tight with anger. I cannot believe you have done this. Rebecca, investigating your own sister and her fiance? Creating this presentation to shame them? This is not how family treats each other. I took a deep breath. You are right. Family should not treat each other this way. Family should not call each other names like old maid. Family should not try to access private financial accounts by impersonation. Family should not go through personal documents without permission. I clicked to the final section of my presentation, showing evidence of the attempts to access my accounts and the email containing my scanned documents. My parents at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Ryan and Cassandra exchanged guilty glances. That was a misunderstanding, my father said weakly. We were just trying to help organize things. By scanning my private financial documents and sending them to Ryan? By Cassandra claiming to have power of attorney over me? I shook my head. That is not help. That is fraud. The room fell silent. The victory they had expected had turned into something else entirely. I could see the calculations happening behind their eyes, the desperate search for a new angle. A way to regain control of the situation. Ryan was the first to recover, slipping back into his charming businessman persona. Rebecca, I understand your concerns. Perhaps we got a bit carried away with the wedding plans. But we can work something out that makes everyone happy. I already have, I replied, advancing to my final slide. Here is my offer. The screen displayed my alternative proposal. 1. A gift of $5,000 toward a reasonably budgeted wedding. 2. Resources for financial counseling and gambling addiction treatment. 3. Assistance finding affordable wedding vendors. 4. A clear statement that any further attempts to access my accounts or pressure me for money would result in legal action. This is insulting. Cassandra spat. $5,000? When you have over $500,000. It is generous considering the circumstances, I countered. And it comes with conditions that would actually help you both in the long run. Ryan laughed, but there was no humor in it. Financial counseling? Gambling addiction treatment? I do not have a gambling problem. I have business investments that sometimes require capital from alternative sources. Bookies are not alternative funding sources, I said quietly. They are predators who profit from addiction. My mother stood up, gathering her purse. I think we have heard enough. Clearly your grandmother's money has changed you, Rebecca. You used to understand the importance of family. I still do, I said, rising as well. That is why I am offering real help instead of enabling destructive behavior. My father looked at me with disappointment that once would have crushed me. You have chosen money over your own sister. No, I corrected him. I have chosen reality over delusion. I have chosen healthy boundaries over exploitation. I am still offering to help, just not in the way you demanded. Cassandra stood up, tears streaming down her face. I will never forgive you for this. Never. Ryan placed an arm around her shoulders, his expression cold. You will regret this decision, Rebecca. When you are old and alone with nothing but your money for company, you will wish you had chosen differently. I met his gaze steadily. I would rather be alone with my integrity than surrounded by people who only value me for what I can give them. One by one, they walked toward the door. My mother paused, turning back with one last attempt. What would your grandmother say if she could see you now, refusing to help your sister? For the first time, I smiled. She would say I finally found my backbone. Goodbye, Mom. The door closed behind them, and I stood alone in my apartment, shaking but unbowed. I had done it. I had stood up to them and refused to be manipulated or exploited. The cost had been high, perhaps the loss of my family relationships, but as I looked around at the home I had built for myself, I knew I had made the right choice. Within hours, the fallout began. Cassandra posted a vague, but clearly targeted message on social media about toxic family members who care more about money than love. My mother called several relatives, sharing her version of events that cast me as the villain. My father emailed a brief, formal message stating that I would not be welcome at family gatherings until I reconsidered my priorities. I had expected all of this, but it still hurt. These were the people who had known me all my life, yet they had chosen to believe the worst of me rather than acknowledge their own behavior. What I had not expected was the support that emerged from unexpected places. My cousin Allison, who had always been close to Cassandra, called me directly. I just wanted you to know that I do not believe what they are saying about you, she said. Ryan has borrowed money from half the family and never paid anyone back. We all knew something was off about their wedding plans. My grandmother's oldest friend Harriet sent me a handwritten letter. Martha would be proud of you, she wrote. She always said you were the only one who truly understood the value of both money and principles. Even some of Cassandra's friends reached out privately, sharing stories of her increasing materialism and Ryan's sketchy business proposals. The picture that emerged confirmed everything I had discovered and more. As painful as it was to lose my immediate family, I began to realize I was not as alone as they wanted me to believe. I had built connections and relationships based on mutual respect and genuine caring. Those were proving far more valuable than relationships maintained through obligation and manipulation. 2 weeks after our confrontation, I received a text from Cassandra. The venue canceled our reservation because we missed the payment deadline. I hope you are happy now. I did not respond. There was nothing more to say. 6 months passed, bringing changes I could never have predicted. The renovation of my grandmother's house was complete, transforming it into a comfortable, modern home that still honored her memory. I had kept her garden, her antique writing desk, and the patchwork quilt she had made decades ago. The rest I had updated to suit my needs, creating a space that felt both connected to her and truly mine. My inheritance remained largely intact, wisely invested according to the plan I had developed with my financial advisor. I had used a small portion to update the house, another small portion to boost my retirement savings, and $5,000 to establish a scholarship in my grandmother's name at the local community college, where she had studied nursing. The professional and personal boundaries I had established were serving me well. I had received a promotion at work, partly because I was no longer distracted by family drama and could focus fully on my career. I had deepened my friendships with people who respected me, and even reconnected with relatives who had reached out after hearing conflicting stories about our family rift. As for my immediate family, the situation had evolved in unexpected ways. Cassandra and Ryan had indeed gotten married, though in a ceremony dramatically scaled down from their original plans. The wedding took place at a local community center with about 50 guests, a far cry from the 300-person extravaganza they had envisioned. I learned this not through an invitation, but from photos posted online by mutual acquaintances. According to my cousin Allison, who had attended, the event had been nice enough but tense. Ryan had argued with the photographer over prices, and Cassandra had made several pointed comments about certain family members being absent. My parents had put on brave faces, but seemed uncomfortable throughout the celebration. More significantly, my father had called me about 3 months after our confrontation. The conversation was stiff and formal, but contained something close to an apology. "I may have been hasty in some of my judgments," he said carefully. "Your mother and I have had some concerns about Ryan's financial situation that we should have considered earlier." Those concerns, I later learned, stemmed from Ryan asking them for a loan just 2 weeks after the wedding. When they hesitated, he had become angry and accused them of favoring me over Cassandra, using many of the same manipulation tactics they had once directed at me. My mother had not reached out directly, but she had sent a birthday card with a brief note, "Thinking of you. The house looks lovely from the outside." It was minimal, but it was something. Cassandra remained firmly estranged, blocking me on all social media and refusing to be present if I was invited to any extended family events. But even there, cracks were beginning to show. Her teaching assistant position had ended, and she had been unable to secure a full-time teaching job. According to Allison, she and Ryan were living with our parents temporarily while sorting out their finances. As for me, the greatest surprise had come in the form of reconnection with Thomas Mitchell, a childhood friend who had moved away after high school. He had returned to town to take a position at the local hospital as a pediatrician and had reached out after seeing my name mentioned in a local news article about the scholarship I had established. Our coffee catch-up had turned into dinner, which had turned into regular dating over the past 3 months. Thomas was kind, thoughtful, and responsible with his own life and finances. A refreshing change from the chaos I had left behind. While it was too soon to know where our relationship might lead, for the first time in years, I felt open to the possibility of sharing my life with someone. On a crisp autumn evening, as Thomas and I walked through my grandmother's garden, now my garden, he asked about the family situation I had only briefly mentioned before. "You do not have to share if it is too difficult," he assured me. "But I have noticed you get quiet whenever family comes up." Sitting on the garden bench my grandmother had loved, I told him the whole story, from the inheritance to the confrontation and its aftermath. He listened without interruption, his expression thoughtful. "Your grandmother was right about your backbone," he said when I had finished. "What you did took incredible courage." It did not feel like courage at the time, I admitted. It felt like survival. "That is often when we find our true strength," he replied. "When we have no choice but to stand up for ourselves." As the months continued to pass, I found myself reflecting often on the lessons of this painful chapter. I had learned that family is defined by actions, not blood. That boundaries are not selfish but necessary for healthy relationships. That standing firm in your values may cost you relationships that were never truly supportive to begin with. Most importantly, I had learned that my grandmother's belief in me had been justified. She had seen strength in me that I had not recognized in myself until tested. Her inheritance had been more than money. It had been an opportunity to discover who I truly was when pushed to my limits. The money itself, while significant, was never the real issue. It was the catalyst that revealed character. Mine and theirs. I had chosen to honor my grandmother's legacy by being thoughtful and responsible with what she had entrusted to me. They had chosen to view it as something they were entitled to, regardless of their behavior or intentions. Last week, I received an unexpected letter from my mother. Unlike her terse birthday note, this one filled 2 pages with reflections and what seemed like genuine remorse. "Ryan and Cassandra have moved out," she wrote. "Things have been difficult. And your father and I have had many conversations about our role in enabling behavior we should have questioned. We miss you, Rebecca. While we understand if you need more time, we hope someday you might be willing to talk. I have not yet decided how or if to respond. The wounds are still healing, and trust, once broken, requires more than words to rebuild. But I am considering it, which is progress I could not have imagined 6 months ago. Whatever happens with my family relationships, I know now that I can stand on my own. making decisions based on what is right rather than what is easy or expected. My grandmother's faith in me, expressed through her inheritance, turned out to be the greatest gift possible, though not in the way anyone could have predicted. So, what would I tell someone facing similar family pressure or manipulation? Trust your instincts. Set clear boundaries. Recognize that true love does not come with conditions or demands. And remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and others, is to say no to destructive patterns. I often think about what my grandmother would say if she could see me now. I like to believe she would smile that knowing smile of hers and say, "I told you so, Rebecca. I always knew you had it in you." What about you? Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure or manipulation? How did you handle it, and what did you learn? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of setting boundaries and finding strength. And remember, sometimes the family we choose is more supportive than the family we are born into. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to stand firm in your own values, whatever challenges you face.